Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall. This is officially the review episode of Daggerfall. If you've seen yesterday, the final bonus episode number 14, went live. And so now it's just time for us to have a nice little sit-down chat about kind of my experience playing Daggerfall for the first time. Now, before we begin doing that, I had forgotten one thing. And that was here at the banks, we could buy a ship. And so I took out a loan amount, and I believe I can now just purchase the ship. So let's go ahead and buy it. You purchase a sturdy vessel capable of ferrying you anywhere within the Iliac Bay. I don't know where to go pick this up, so let's go maybe try and find where to pick up the boat at. Daggerfall ended up being, if you're counting episode 0, I'm assuming we have to probably go over here by the water to get our boat, maybe? I have no idea where to actually go and, like, physically pick up a boat. Oh, our horse got hurt. So, there were 40, if you're counting episode 0, which is character creation, because I always do episode 0 as character creation pretty much only, because I want to spend time and dedicated, efforts in kind of explaining the background of the game and all that stuff. So, we're counting episode 0 as an episode, which I do. The main series of Daggerfall took 47 episodes in total. Then it took an additional 14 bonus episodes of books to make sure we get all the lore in, because by the time we actually finished with the game, we hadn't got through all the books. So roughly, so if we're counting additionally 14 bonus episodes, it was 61 episodes in total. And yeah, okay. I don't see my boat, so that's really interesting. How do I get on my boat? Alright, so I'm back. We are here on our boat that we bought. Finally is able to figure out how to do it. You go to ship down here and you press T. So this is kind of cool. This is something we didn't really get to kind of see or experience on our regular, playthrough. So it's kind of cool. They have ships here that you can go and, at least be on. I went down and explored. There's nothing really down there, but yeah, so I did, unfortunately, I think, lose fortune in this entire endeavor. So I'm actually going to go on ahead and load up my end save, because I've had that horse longer than I've had this boat. I care more about that horse than I do that boat. So yeah, as I was saying, 47 episodes of actual gameplay for Daggerfall, 14 bonus episodes for a total of 61 episodes across, all of the, the game. And overall, I had a really enjoyable experience. If you were not here for my review for Arena, let me kind of briefly run down how this is going to go. I'm going to give, kind of my opinion of the game. I'm going to list some pros, some things I liked about the game, some cons, some things I did not like about the game. And then I'm going to rate the game. And I rate the game a little differently than, most people like an IGN or really any, media person would do, or media outlet would do. And I don't rate on a scale, I don't do a professional rating on a scale of 1 to 10 or, 1 to 100. Some people do 1 to 100. I do it on a scale of buy, wait, or skip. Now, like if it was for Arena, this game is free, so you can't buy it. And because you can't buy it, you can't wait for it to go on sale. So wait is also kind of not an option. So for this game, I will be rating on a scale, kind of a modified scale of play or skip, is basically how I'm going to rate it. And by the way, all of these things I'm going to say is for the Daggerfall Unity version. I did not play the original Daggerfall, from 1996. This is the Daggerfall Unity version. From what I heard, the original Daggerfall is not aged gracefully. That's why Daggerfall Unity is a thing. But there's going to be one difference for the Daggerfall review and kind of all reviews going forward. And I'm going to kind of retroactively go back because I did not do it for Arena, and that is I'm also going to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, but that is going to be my own personal scale. And so I'm always going to be keeping the buy, wait, or skip scale as a kind of a quote-unquote professional rating, and then allow the 1 to 10 scale to be my own personal ranking. I can let my own personal biases affect that. And, I'm going to be honest, I'm a very harsh grader. For me, 5 is an average game. We're at a point now where in, gaming where any game under, an 8 is seen as a bad game, really, and I don't believe that. I think most games fall within roughly, if you're looking at the kind of the distribution scale, the I think it's bell curve. It's been so long since I took probability and statistics. If you look at the bell curve distribution, most games, if you're under the assumption, like let's say 5.5 is like the perfect average, like that is the definition of an average game, then roughly 90 or 85 to 90% of all games should fall within like probably plus or minus 1.5 in either direction of 5.5. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. There could be debate about that. Anyway, but the reason I don't rate on a 1 to 10 scale is because it always inherently allows the reviewer's biases into the review, which I don't want to do on a quote-unquote professional level. That's why I do it on a buy, wait, or skip. I think that's just overall a better one that can minimize the biases. And then when I do an actual rating scale, I can then just let my biases fly. But yeah, before we get to that, we're gonna talk about some pros and some cons. So, all right, I've actually went and made it day because I didn't want to do this review at night. That's kind of a little somber. Let's make it bright and nice. So the first pro, actually, I'm going to go in here to kind of show it, is especially comparing. I just got done prior to playing Daggerfall, playing Arena for the first time, and one of the number one pros of Daggerfall is the lore. There is so much lore in this game in comparison to what was in Arena. I had said in my Arena review that, and I don't hold it against Arena because their vision changed for the game halfway through, or a portion halfway-ish through the development cycle. And so they really didn't have much of an option at that point. Whereas in Daggerfall, you can see that their focus at that point was to build an RPG and build a world. But my complaint during Arena was that it had the area, the vast area of an ocean, but the depth of a puddle of water. And that was always that was my complaint majorly with Arena, is in the fantasy trope of good and evil, protagonist versus antagonist. It's the character's name in the game was Talon versus Jagar Tharn, and it was building up to the climax of that. Whereas, and there was not really any focus anywhere else. If there was no lore. There were mentions of deities. I think there were mentions of deities, but they were not considered deities in Arena. They were considered, long dead ancient powerful magic users. And basically, when Daggerfall came out, they kind of, retracted that and really fleshed it out. And Daggerfall is a very, very lore deep world with the books. Again, I encourage you, if you did not go back and listen to every book at the end of every episode and in the bonus episodes, if you're wanting lore, the lore is in those books. It is some really interesting lore, and guess what? Some of those books that we read are not going to be in any future Elder Scrolls games. If my memory serves me correctly, that 12-part King Edward series that we read, King Edward, I think, is exclusive to Daggerfall, if my memory serves me correctly. So that is one of the biggest pros of this game, is finally they shrunk down the area from having the entire continent down to just this little section right here. And because of them focusing down and having that, it allows them to then build the world around it and make it feel deeper. The second pro, is character creation. Character creation for the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall is deep. And because of that, it allows you to basically play whatever type of character you want. Do you want to play a magic user? You can play it. Do you want to play, just a big old barbarian brute that has, doesn't use magic? Guess what? You can play it. You want to play a thief? You can play it. You want to play every style. You want to play an archer? You can play it. Every style of play is allowed in Daggerfall due to their deep character creation. And it's really, really phenomenal. The third pro is the combat. The combat's actually really good. From one of the things I had said in Arena is I actually enjoyed the combat in Arena. It was a little weirder for someone coming, from, the 20s, coming back and playing a game from the 90s where, you swing with the mouse and that swings your sword. And in this game, due to Daggerfall Unity, I'm using a click version. I'm not using the mouse controls, the direction of the swings. But overall, the combat was good. It was different. It just felt smooth and overall an enjoyable experience. It didn't feel monotonous like it did in Arena. A lot of the time in Arena, it would feel like I'm doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. Whereas in Arena, because it's so smooth and because it's so responsive, at least with me having very high reflexes on, note that that is one of the things. I did have the reflexes set to very high. The combat feels pretty much like a modern day, to a degree, modern day combat is not slow like it was in Arena. Another pro is there is great design. And what I mean specifically about that is the way things look. So for example, let's travel here. Let's go on ahead and travel. Let's actually take out ports. Let's travel to Daggerfall itself real quick. And as we're traveling over here to Daggerfall, I want you guys to look around at the buildings that you're seeing and in the Daggerfall area. And specifically, I want to, spend time focusing specifically on the castles, because I think the castles are the perfect example of what I'm meaning in this. As we travel over here back to Castle Daggerfall, here we go. So here is the Daggerfall region. Here's their houses. Here is the castle for Daggerfall. We go over here to Wayrest, which is another main area, another main faction of the game. It's one of the big, 3 factions. We go over here and we were to travel over here to Castle Wayrest. The buildings, I'm going to be honest, here the buildings look somewhat similar. They look pretty similar to what we saw in Daggerfall, but I think one of the biggest takeaways is when we get over here to the castle is how different the castle looks. As we come up on here, it's, in a nice kind of little park area. And this exterior looks so much different than the exterior of Castle Daggerfall. And then if we were to go over here, down to Sentinel, and actually travel to Sentinel itself, which is the 3rd major faction, major area, right? And if we go over here to the Sentinel area, if we go to the map, no, not that map, if we go to the map, the layout of Sentinel is very different than it is in Daggerfall and it is in Wayrest. And especially it's go over here and it's very much a kind of different architecture style for even the castle of Sentinel. Look here at the entrance to this castle. It's completely a different look. It's a different feel. And that is a really unique, that's a really great design. And that's something I can really say is that for the main story areas, they made a very good job making the main castle feel different. I apparently ran over someone, so I'm going to get halted, so I need to actually just kind of skedaddle around from here and not get caught. Anyway, it made each area feel unique and different, and that was a really awesome thing. And let me actually get out of Sentinel, because I'm actually going to have to travel just to somewhere else, because I don't want to have to go in front of a judge. I think this is the area. Yes, here's the city gate. Okay, can we actually just travel out of here, back to, I don't know, here. Perfect. Another really fun element of Daggerfall, another pro, is that there are a lot of guilds. I mean, think about it. There is, in here, I don't think we picked a good enough city to warrant a, yeah, there's not. There's a lot of guilds. There is the Fighters Guild. There's the Mages Guild. There are Knight Guilds, which, there are unique Knight Guilds for each, distinct area. I think there's like 8 or 12 or 16 different Knight orders. I mean, they all have the same, type of quests, but each are different and they represent different ideals and values. There are, temple guilds, and, there are for the 8 different temples. And, again, the temples have pretty much the same quest. There is one unique quest associated with each of the 8 temples, but there's that. There's the Dark Brotherhood Guild. There's the Thieves Guild. I had a mod in here. I'm not really going to talk about modding a whole lot, but I had the Archaeologist Guild, which was another guild in Daggerfall Unity. So there's a lot of guilds that wasn't there in Arena. And again, one of the complaints of Arena, there was miscellaneous quests that were, go deliver this, go, kill that. But there was nothing there. It was just main story. Whereas in Daggerfall, it's fleshed out. Here's the guilds. Here are things to do. Another cool thing kind of building off of the guild thing is that each guild, when you are ranking up through them, they give you really kind of cool perks or things that are there if you're going and building up reputation for them up through, I think each guild reaches out or maxes out at level 9. So for example, the Knights Guild. The Knights Guild, if you reach max rank, you can get free lodging, any inn free in anywhere in the Bay region, which is awesome. If you are a Mages Guild member, you get access to teleportation circles and to Daedra summoning. If you are a Dark Brotherhood, you get access to potion mixing and making. You get access to Spy Masters. In the Fighters Guild, you get access to trainer. We always get access to trainers, but you get access to weapons repairs. And so these are really kind of cool perks that along the way really make it, worthwhile to join these guilds and build up the reputation for them. Another really cool element, I will fully admit, this is something that I did not really experiment with at all in my playthrough, but I do want to mark on it and praise it, because I think it is definitely a pro, and that is we did a little bit with magic, but the magic and potion making elements that are in this game, we didn't really do a whole lot with potions, and we didn't make custom magic spells, but we were more of a really heavily combat, physical combat, not magic combat character. We had supplemental magic, but the ability to create these custom spells and have potion making as in depth as it is really, really awesome and really fun. And that is another great thing for a game from '96 to have that implemented. It's got to be praised. The second to last pro that I'm listing here is that throughout the entire game, there was a really good balance of quest to reward. Quest to reward. And what I mean by that is, specifically, I never felt like I really, truly needed gold. If you look at my armor, all of these, everything I think I got on, I think every single solitary piece of this was looted from enemies during quests. Just random enemies. I think every single one. Maybe there was one thing I didn't get. Maybe there's one thing that I bought. I think maybe I bought the Daikatana, maybe. If my memory serves me correctly. But everything else I was looted off of things. And so that led me to, get vast amount of gold. And through that I was able to get housing, which is really cool. I know I took a loan out to get a boat earlier in this episode. You kind of saw that. But because of that, yeah, I never really needed gold. So I think that's a really great thing, that it shows that there was a good enough balance in the game between the quests and the gold that I was never really hurting. Now, I will note one thing, that when we got to the Daedric quests, I absolutely console commanded in the gold for that, because of the high price that is associated with the Daedric quests. For those that don't know, it's 200,000 gold to base. It's 200,000 gold base to summon a Daedric prince, and it's not even a guarantee that they will be summoned. And so that's a lot of gold. And the only reason I would console command in gold in this was because I'm doing a series. I want to experience the quests. I want you guys to experience the quests. But for someone who is maybe, doesn't really care about the Daedric quests, maybe only wants to do one or maybe two of them, there's more than enough gold in the game to allow that, and hope you get lucky with, maybe it not eating your 200,000 gold. But overall, it's not like I was sitting here and I had to grind and farm gold. We've all played those games where, you're like, oh, this game's so hard, it's reached a difficulty spike. I now need to go sit I need to now go sit and farm, this. I need to go farm gold. I need to go farm this or that or the other. And thankfully, that wasn't the case. Briefly, I'm even going to count this as a pro. I just want to mention it is we got to level 25 in the game. The max level is 32. Now, again, I attribute that heavily towards the character creation. I used a build guide I used a build that another YouTuber, I forget who his name was, I shouted him out in episode 0, and it's been linked in every episode. I used his build for Daggerfall because I had kind of tested it playing around in Daggerfall, just doing some stability testing when we started out, and my first couple of builds were not good. I really suffered in Privateer's Hold, and his build actually got through it relatively easily, and so that's what we stuck with. But because it was such a low, starting on the dagger down here, which is like in character creation, there was a dagger, and you give yourself disadvantages and advantages, and it was up to 3.0x multiplication or a 0.3x multiplication. We were able to get the dagger down to 0.3x, so we were able to level much quicker. Because of that, we got to level 25, which max level is 32, and even to get that, you have to really kind of plan ahead. So we didn't really even run into problems as far as like being underleveled. If anything, and people can attest to this, we kind of ran into problems kind of being overleveled when, at a certain point, the only thing we were really truly ever facing was liches and vampires. I swear, that's what, like, roughly the last third of the game was me facing, was just liches and vampires, and then occasionally like a regular enemy or a random enemy. And this leaves me to, I think, my final pro, and that is that at its core, the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall is an RPer's dream game. It is an RPer's dream game. It allows you to play and assume the role of whatever you may like. If you don't want to do the main quest, guess what? You don't have to do the main quest. If you want to say, I want to build a character, and I want my character to be, this kind of just guy that sticks to this one area and just helps the community there, and maybe joins a temple, and that's all you do in the game, guess what? The game will allow you to do that. So this is really, truly, at its core, an RPer's dream. Now, with that being said, and I'm still listing it as a pro because I'm trying to remain unbiased, and I have to recognize that there are a lot of people who play games for an RP element, who will play this through as for an RP element. Whereas my own personal view, I don't play these games as an RP element, ever. I want to see what the game has to offer. I want to play and enjoy the experience they've given me, and through that I can kind of create an RP, but I don't create my own RP out of the basics, basically. So while, for RPers, that is a pro, there's going to be a reverse in the con list of this for me, and I'll get to it here in a little bit. But I do have to, acknowledge, for a person that likes role-playing, that loves the idea of role-playing and role-playing games and role-playing characters, Daggerfall is one of the best examples of allowing a person to create whatever type of character they want and letting them live that life. And as we go out here to just kind of explore and wander, I guess, now around the wilderness, because that's kind of what we did for Arena, let's move over and talk about the cons, things that I personally didn't like, things I think they could have done better at, the things that, and if I think they could have done better, or the reason why I'm giving something a negative opinion, I'm going to try and explain the best I can the reasons why I'm giving it a negative opinion. So, the first con, and I think everybody and their mother knew that this was coming, and it is my number one con, and that is the dungeon map. I don't know who in their right mind at Bethesda thought that having that map was a good idea, but boy, oh boy, were they wrong. I have never dealt with a more frustrating map element in my life. It is rage-inducing. And here's the thing, maybe I could forgive it if the dungeons weren't as labyrinthian in nature as they come. And I know what some people are going to say. They're going to go in the comments, they're going to say, there's a small, dungeons option in Daggerfall Unity. And yes, I am very much aware there was a smaller dungeons, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to try and experience the game as they intended. And they really never intended for a smaller dungeons game or a smaller dungeons option to kind of be there. So I wanted to kind of experience it in its full quote-unquote glory, and we did, and boy, oh boy. It's hard to control, it's hard to understand where you're at. It's not intuitive, and because of that, when you combine that with the labyrinthian style nature of the dungeons, especially some of the main story dungeons, I'm looking at you, Lysandus's Tomb, it gets very frustrating very quickly, and because you're spending so long there, it builds and builds and builds until there's a boiling point. So that is by far and away my first con, is that horrific 3D map of Daggerfall, which from what I've seen is pretty much everyone agrees with me that it is a horrible, horrible system. So I said this in Arena because I didn't like Arena's map either. And people kind of, I think, were hinting at that, oh boy, wait till he plays Daggerfall. And I didn't understand it at the time, but I now do. I now say, as we're going to be going into, I mean, technically we're going into Battlespire next, but the next main game is Morrowind. Please let us never have to deal with that bad of a map ever again, please. I beg you. My second con of this game actually is in reference to, or specifically focusing on the guilds in the game. Not the main story, just the guilds, the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, Knights Guild, Temple Guild, Dark Brotherhood, and Thieves Guild. And my biggest complaint with that is, and kind of all of these next points to a degree, these next 4 points kind of all to a degree tie in with one another, that I'm going to try my best to kind of wrap up into a nice little bow, and the reasons why I consider them all separate cons and not just one gigantic con. My issue with the guilds in this game is that there is no real overarching story, and because of that, from my perspective and the way I play games, I am not as inherently intrigued or enticed to really delve into and focus on the intricate details of each guild. Whereas if there were to be an overarching story for, let's say the Mages Guild or any of the guilds that builds on itself, then I'm invested as a player. Whereas the guilds, and I will say this, the Mages Guild has a quest line that has an overarching, it's a 3-part quest line called Former Student. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was one of the better quests in the game. But by and large, all of the quests of the guilds are roughly the same. It fills into one of 2 categories. It's go to X to find Y and return in Z days, or it's go to X to go kill Y and return in Z number of days. And it's these kind of just repeated missions over and over, no tie whatsoever between them, that doesn't make me get invested within the guild itself, that it could have been if there were, saying, an overarching story for that guild that I could have gotten invested into. And I'm going to go more into how I would have remedied that really kind of at the end, because again, all of these points flow together into kind of one major point. Another con, third con, is that the main quest in this game is just kind of confusing, and because of that, it has the ability to lock, if you play certain quests out of order, you have the ability to lock out quest lines. And we kind of experienced that in my playthrough. I did a quest too early, and because of that, another quest didn't pop up. And by the way, I was using a guide. I was using from the UASP a picture guide, a graphic saying, this is the way you do it, so you'd avoid that. And I still ran into that problem. And from what I've talked to, a lot of people who've played this game, is they actually recommend to use that kind of graphic from the UASP to kind of show the quests and how they interact with one another, because how confusing the main quest can be, and the lockout feature that is kind of prevalent within it. And because it is so disjointed, really, at its core, the main quest, because, you know, there's sections of it that's focusing on the letter, and then there's sections of it that's focusing on Lysandus, and they all kind of mix, and it's hard to, and they're all kind of going on at the same time. It just really muddies the water a lot of the time, instead of really focusing on one, honing in on one, making it a fulfilling story and end, and then focusing on the other. The fourth point is that the fourth con is that at the core, the main story, I've kind of always attributed the main story as a political thriller mystery. Is at its core what I've always kind of described the main story as. Where exactly is the con of its, you know, the main quest is a political thriller mystery? The main con is this, that if you're going to go down that route of a political thriller mystery instead of again, compare it to Arena, where in Arena it was the, you know, typical protagonist versus antagonist that builds and builds and builds and finally, you know, reaches its crescendo and its climax at the end, and tells overall a satisfying story. Whereas in Daggerfall, it's not that. It's this thing that is, it's politics, and it's conspiracy, and it's who is right, who's playing you, who's not. And in order to do that, I think really right, I think that really Daggerfall needed to have built the story a little bit better. And what do I mean a little bit better is, and I'm probably going to include the how, because I actually did the math on it and how I would have fixed it, is specifically is in the main quest you're dealing with the kingdom of Daggerfall, you are dealing with the kingdom of Wayrest, and you are dealing with the kingdom of Sentinel. You have some quests here in the Isle of Balfiera. You have some quests over in the Orsinium area, and then you have quests over here in the Orsinium area, and you have some quests over here in the Rothgarian Mountains. But really, the royal families you're dealing with are Daggerfall, Wayrest, and Sentinel. And if you're going to do a political mystery thriller, I think you really need to put time and focus specifically in the region and building up the region, understanding... Oh, there's something over here to the side. It's a little mausoleum thing. Cool. Building up the region and making the region kind of unique and different from one another. And how would I have changed that? Because if you're building the region, you're weaving the protective story building net through which the main quest can stand upon. And so this is what I mean. I did the math, and according to the UASP, there were 227 unique, distinct quests in the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall. Now, of those, there were 23 main and side quests. Side quests are quests that are related to the main story, not, quests associated with guilds. So main and side quests is 23 in total. For the Fighters Guild, there are 22 quests. For the Mages Guild, 20. For the Knights Guild, 17. For the Temple, 17, plus I think an additional 8 for each temple-specific quest. 13 for the Dark Brotherhood, 15 for the Thieves Guild, and 16 for the Daedric Princes, for a total of 143. That means there is a difference of 84 quests, and those 84 quests comes in things like the Noble quests, the generic Noble quests, the generic Tavern and Innkeeper quest kind of things. And this is in the main game, and again, one of my biggest complaints in the guilds is there's no overarching story. There's nothing there. There's nothing that ties in anything or does anything whatsoever. So really, when you get to the main quest, the game expects you to have read all of the books up to that point, and we gotten through some of them, and we had knew some of these characters, but because of that, when you're doing the main quest, a lot of the time it feels like, oh, here are these characters, and a lot of the time it feels, if you're doing political thriller, it needs to be eased upon and then build. Whereas when you're doing 23 quests, there's not really a build-up. There's not really an easing in. Here in the map, there are, according to the UASP wiki, there are 41 continental locations that you can go, travel, and explore fully. And then there are 3 island locations. I'm assuming it's this one, and the Isle of Balfiera. So roughly, 44 regions to specifically go and explore fully and really have a good time. But if you're going to be doing a main quest that is a political thriller mystery, instead of doing what they did, which is 227 quests, and I gave the breakdown, but instead were to have done it like, for example, this. The 16 Daedric Prince quests stay exactly the same. They can, if you want to change up how they're done a little, you can, but roughly the 16 Daedric Prince quests are fine. They can be what they are. The real changes come with the other guilds, and then really the main and side quests is how I chose to change up how this would get built differently. And that is that one of the major first changes would be to get rid of pretty much the rest of these locations that you don't really need or have to go to. There's no real important element to the story itself to go to Totembu or Hambria or Dwynnin, when the main story is focused on the area of Daggerfall, Wayrest, and Sentinel. You could have said, we're getting rid of all of these. They can explore Daggerfall in its entirety, they can explore Wayrest in its entirety, and Sentinel in its entirety, and that would have been a lot of stuff to explore anyway. Have the Isle of Balfiera, have the Orsinium area where Gortwalk is, and the area in which Nulfaga is here in the Rothgarian Mountains just be clickable things which you just travel to. That way, there's not as many areas to go to, and instead focus at something along the lines of this. That in each region specifically, there are unique quest lines associated with each of the guilds. So, if I go here to Daggerfall, and this is the way I worked it out, is that there would be 6 unique Daggerfall quests, and 2 of them could be considered what I call the typical quests of go to X to find Y and return in Z days could be one, and then the other would be go to X to kill Y and return in Z days, and you could have a bunch of like things that could fill in that can change it out, but it's just that same formula. So that leaves 4 quests. Have 4 of those quests be an overarching quest line for the Fighters Guild, specifically in the Daggerfall region, that builds up the Daggerfall area, so you kind of know that. Maybe it ties in directly with the royal family. It doesn't have to, but maybe it does. That way, after you're done with the Fighters Guild, like, oh, I have experience with the Daggerfall royal family. As that way, when I get into the main quest, I'm like, oh, it's them. I've kind of known them. It builds up the basis for the main story to stand up on if you're doing a political mystery thriller. Because at its core, if you're doing politics, the region in which the politics come from have to be built up right. And I don't feel that in that way that the game does that effectively enough. It does it good, but it could be done better. So again, for Daggerfall, there could be, the 4 overarching quests of the Fighters Guild specifically for the Daggerfall region. The Mages Guild would be a 4-quest overarching story for the Mages Guild specific to the region of Daggerfall. The Knights Guild, you don't need, the however many Knights Guild there are in the game. You just need a Knights Guild for the Daggerfall region, a Knights Guild for the Sentinel region, and a Knights Guild for the Wayrest region. You have a 4-part overarching quest line for the Knights Guild specific to that region to build up that region story-wise, lore-wise. making it really kind of feel different than it does in the way it's implemented. The temple guilds, we have to be a little bit weirder because, again, there are 8 temples in the game, so I didn't work out exactly how the temple guilds would work exactly like that. Dark Brotherhood, another 4-part quest line that associates to the Daggerfall region for the Daggerfall, section of the Dark Brotherhood, or the Daggerfall section of the Thieves Guild. So if we were to do that, if each guild, the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Knights Guild, the Temple Guilds, which I will say, out of all of the guilds, the Temple Guild is the one I would need to do a little bit more work on, because it's a little bit confusing, because there are 8 temples in the game, so we would have to kind of maybe rework or refocus the way that the Temples Guild works. And then the Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild, if each of those were to have 6 quests, again, 4 quests to be an overarching story for that guild of the region, to build up that region, and then 2 of, those kind of just generic quests of go to X to find Y and return in Z days, go to X to kill Y and return in Z days, and to have those be kind of, you complete over and over and over again. It builds up that region. And because of that, if I did the math, it was 41 quests would fill in the Daggerfall area. Now, I will say this. There are 5 quests that I would leave as miscellaneous. And whether that could be determined on what you want to do with it, whether they be like generic, whether they want to be noble quests, whether they want to be innkeeper quests. Those 5 quests could also be, go to X to kill Y, return in Z days, go to X to find Y, return in Z days. Can you deliver this letter? Can you go, transport this person to this other city? So 5 of those kind of just generic quests, and that totals out to 41. And that extrapolates down, those 41 quests extrapolate down not only to Daggerfall, but Wayrest and Sentinel. So each area has their own unique 4-part quest line. The Fighters Guild and Sentinel has their own unique 4-part quest line. The Mages Guild, own unique 4-part quest line in all of these areas, to go and really build up the region that they're in, so that when you get to the main story, you can really feel the region and the impact that you're about to go into when you're going into a political thriller mystery. Again, not every quest in the region has to tie directly into the royal family. Maybe one of the quest lines tie in directly to the royal family. Maybe 2. They don't all have to tie in. Maybe one just ties into the common people. One maybe the Thieves Guild ties into specifically the criminal element of the Daggerfall area, whereas the Thieves Guild in Sentinel would tie in directly to a story talking and dealing with the aristocracy of Sentinel, and it builds up the region in a different way than the game currently did. So you have those 4 quests here for each of the guilds, but that's actually not it. Whereas there's also an overarching guild line as well outside of each regional guild line that would take you into basically I consider them 5 quests. It would be the first quest, the introductory quest. Then it would be 3 quests, 1 quest that would take you into Daggerfall, 1 quest that would take you into Sentinel, 1 quest that would take you into Wayrest, thus making you kind of go to each of the guilds in these areas to do the regional guild line as well. And then ultimately a main capstone quest that is for the overarching thing. Because here's the thing, we can all acknowledge, the Fighters Guild of Daggerfall has a unique focus on what they're wanting to achieve. The Sentinel Fighters Guild would have a unique focus on what they're wanting to achieve. Same with Wayrest. However, the overarching Fighters Guild as a whole for the continent may have this other focus that could be what the main story guild line could be, and that could work out for the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Knights Guild, the Temple Guilds, the Dark Brotherhood, Thieves Guild. And then finally that leaves us with the main and side quests, which I increase the number of quests up to roughly about 30. Roughly. Up from 23. That leaves us down to a final quest total if we're just specifically talking about a Daggerfall region, a Wayrest region, and a Sentinel region, which really, that's the main focus of the game, is these three regions. You know, Isle of Balfiera, as you know, the area where Gortwog lives in Orcinum area, and the Rothgarian Mountain area in which Nulfaka lives could be just, you know, clickable areas you just immediately travel to. So if you're just leaving, you know, getting rid of all the rest of these areas, and instead just focusing solely on a Daggerfall, on a Sentinel, and on a Wayrest, which by the way would be large enough on their own, let alone combined, it would lead to this. It would lead to a main quest and side quest total of 30. The original 16 Daedric Prince quests, the Fighters Guild, the reworked Fighters Guild, would come out to 23 quests. The 23 quests come from the 6 quests of Wayrest, the 6 quests of Sentinel, and the 6 quests of Daggerfall for 18, plus the overarching 5 quest line for the quest. And the overarching 5 quest line story for that guild itself, for a total of 23. And then that works the same for Mages Guild, Knights Guild. Temple, again, we would have to work out differently because there are temple-specific quests for each of the 8 deities. So because of that, there are 31 quests in the temple, 23 in the Dark Brotherhood, 23 in the Thieves Guild. And that leaves, again, because each area has miscellaneous quests of 5, it leaves 15 miscellaneous quests. If we were to total that up, that leaves 207 quests. 207. In the original game, there are 227 quests. That is a difference of 20 quests. There are 20 less quests in my reworked version of Daggerfall. Now maybe you want to go and put those 20 extra quests in the miscellaneous category. That way there's 35 miscellaneous quests that could, you know, fill out the, you know, the rest of the game, noble quests, innkeeper quests. But through this very different focus, cutting down the number of regions you can travel to down from, you know, the 44 regions you can travel to in this game down to just the 3 main areas in which the main quest actually takes place, Daggerfall, Wayrest, and Sentinel, and then doing a different focus away from what Daggerfall did, which is just have guild quests have really no overarching story, no real meaning, just go to this to find Y and return in Z days, instead of have an overarching story that helps build up the region of the area, and then an overarching story of that guild. I think it leads to a more full and rich game. And because you go and spend time through the guilds building up the region, it then allows the main quest, which is a political thriller mystery, to then shine, because then you've got a real good grasp and idea of the region, of the politics behind Daggerfall, of the politics behind Wayrest, and it makes the main quest so much more worth it. That's what I'm meaning by the con of, if you're doing a political thriller, build story. And that leads me to my final kind of con is this. Daggerfall is more of a medieval, and this leads me to my final con, which is Daggerfall can be more of a medieval life simulator than an RPG. And again, this ties into one of the pros, which is it's an RPer's dream. It's kind of two sides of the same coin. For some people that like that, that's a great thing. For some people who don't and are wanting the story provided, there are ways that the developers could have done quest design differently, to have done more to build up each specific region, to make me really understand the differences between each region. And that would have helped build up the overarching main story of a political thriller. So with that being said, that is the end of my pros con list. The cons list obviously a little bit different. I'm trying my best to summarize what I'm meaning. I hope really you guys got what I was meaning through that summary. Maybe I didn't word it exactly the way I wanted to word it. If I didn't, we can go and have discussions in the comments about it. But I think I tried to make my point of the reasons why I think that they could have done quest design, especially guild quest design, a little bit differently, and if they would have allowed the guilds to focus on the specific region, it could have really helped enhance the overall feeling of the game and ultimately the main questline story. Again, did I summarize it perfectly? No. It's probably still a lot of questions. Yeah, absolutely, but I tried my best. With that being said, it is time to go to the quote-unquote professional rating. Again, I rate on a scale of buy, wait, or skip, because this game you cannot buy, it is free, and because it is free, you can't wait because there's no sale. I will be doing it on a scale of play or skip. So my quote-unquote professional rating of this game is that the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall is a play. Well, let me be more specific. The Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall Unity is a must-play, I think, for anybody. The original Daggerfall, you know, the one that's just available, granted, Daggerfall is also... The original Daggerfall, I would not recommend. From what I've heard, it's not good. That is why we're playing the Unity version. However, the Unity version, wonderful experience. By the way, as I said throughout my series, I ran into bugs. I did not, and I will not be holding the bugs I ran into in this game against this game. I modded the game. I accept responsibility. When I mod a game, they're going to increase the likelihood of bugs and glitches. Also, this game is in a beta. So, the bugs I ran into, the fact that this is beta, had zero effect on any rating I give it. It never has, it never will. Because of that, I rate professionally, this game is a must-play for everybody. I had a really good time playing it. I think you will have a really good time playing it. It is a really good game overall. You come across an active keep known as the Citadel of Wixley. The soldier's giving you dirty... Oh, hello. I'm just gonna go. I'm trying to do a review here. I don't want to be attacked. I will say this, it's nice, you know, in Arena we went into the wilderness and the only thing we came across was a glitch. In Daggerfall we're going through the wilderness and we've actually came across stuff, so that's a nice little change. So yeah, my professional rating is that Daggerfall is a must-play. Whether you're an Elder Scrolls fan or not, I think this is overall, in Daggerfall Unity, a really enjoyable experience. Are there frustrations? Yes, I'm looking at you, camera. But again, a large section of those cons are my own personal cons. You may have a different opinion on those cons. The only, I think the only major con I think that can be agreed upon by everybody is the dungeon map. That's the only one. Everything else we can get picky and choosy on cons. But overall, good game. It is a must-play. Now, with that being said, I guess it's time for me to do my personal rating now, which I did not do for Arena. I did not do a personal rating. I'm actually going to quickly, retroactively go back and in this video give my personal rating of Arena. So let me explain how the scale goes, I guess, because it's the first time me really doing it. I rate on a scale of 1 to 10. If you want to consider, I consider 5 an average, but 5, I guess technically 5.5 is the average. Is considered the perfect average. So the way I typically kind of attribute it is this: a 5 is an average game, and if we're going to work our way down the scale, a 5 is an average game, 4 is below average, 3 is a bad game, 2 is an awful game, 1 is the worst game of all, or contender for the worst game of all time. If we can move up the scale, 6 is above average, 7 is a good game, 8 is a great game, 9 is a phenomenal game, 10 is a perfect game. Now, it should be noted, I do not give games 10s. 10s are something that I think you can strive for, but can never actively be achieved. So that is something to note. It's a little weird kind of personal idiosyncrasy I have, but so I don't give games 10s. I'm apparently completely exhausted. I've been running too much. That's fine. Who cares? To give kind of a look back at Arena, if I were to rate Arena came out in 94. If I'm going to give the game a rating from a 94 perspective, I would give Arena roughly... And I will fully admit, I do not have a lot of experience with games from the 90s, so it's really hard for me to rate it against similar peers. So because of that, I'm going to rate it a 5, because I have very limited experience. I think 5 is fair for a 94 review. Again, it's really the only game that old I've played, so I think that's fair. If I were to rate Arena in a modern day rating, from a 2023 rating, I think obviously it loses a lot of rating, and Arena would go down to... I would give Arena a modern day rating of roughly a 3.25. Is what I would give Arena. It is a bad game. It is not aged well, and again, I give a lot of leeway because the focus changed throughout the development cycle, but still, it doesn't control well, and it's lacking a lot. Whereas Daggerfall, now here is, I guess, the personal review of Daggerfall, because I already gave my professional review of Daggerfall. Daggerfall came out in 1996. I'm not going to be rating the Daggerfall version. I'm going to be rating the Daggerfall Unity version, but I'm still going to give it the idea of a 1996 review, because I think it's fair, because I'm focusing more specifically on the story and other elements. So for a 1990 game released in 1996, I personally think Daggerfall, from a 1996 perspective, is a game that should be rated at roughly a 9.0. I think it is a phenomenal game for 1996. I think I could even be argued up to roughly about a 9.25. I think it's really, really good. Here is where we start to go downhill. Which is a 2023 review. And again, this is my personal review. This allows me to put in my own inherent biases, which is, I'm not an RPer. Again, this is a game that is perfect for RPers. I'm not an RPer. And so a lot of the cons I listed in my list are what's going to affect this score. So as a modern day score, I would give Daggerfall a 7.5 out of 10, which puts it firmly well within not only a good game, but it is going towards the echelons of a great game, which 7.5 for me is actually high. Again, for me, an average game is 5, and the vast majority of games fall within like a, the vast majority of games fall within that, roughly 3 to 7 range. So for a game to get higher than that, it's actually a really good game. The reasons why it is so low, because I know people are automatically I know some people are automatically typing in. When I said my Arena review was there 3.25, I think is what I gave Arena, they're like, that's not low enough. But I know for a fact when I say Daggerfall is a 7.5, they're going to be in the comments. So let me explain why I gave Daggerfall a 7.5 in modern day. Again, I don't give out 10, so it can't be a 10. And the game, I'm 100% serious, the game loses a whole single solitary point, at least a whole single solitary point, based solely on the dungeon map. That dungeon map was annoying. It was really bad. It was really bad. And it was bad from what I've heard in 96. It does not translate any better to 2023. It's even worse. And then the rest of it gets affected by things like, are just personal things. Like, I personally would have preferred an overarching guild story. I personally think the main quest line is confusing, and I don't appreciate the confusing nature of that type of a quest line. I think that, and then the other one is, again, if you're going to do political thriller, I personally think there was different ways or more efficient ways to have built the story up than the way that they went. Not saying that they didn't do a good job, because if they didn't do a good job, the game would have got a whole lot lower of a score. But there are different ways that they could have built that story up to make it really, something phenomenal. Because I think the basis was there. I think and it even hits in certain places. But if they would really spent a little bit more time really honing in and focusing on certain elements, I think it could have been really, really, really good. So that is why it's getting as low as a rating at a 7.5, which, again, people are gonna... Anytime a game gets below an 8, people are up in arms, because, again, we have this weird, distorted view of what makes a good game. Again, for me, I'm a very, very harsh grader. For me, a 5 is the pure definition of an average game. If your game got above a 5, I'm giving your game above a 5, guess what? You got a pretty decent game. So for a 7.5 is a well above... 7.5 puts this game at well above good, not quite great, and I think that is just generally where I feel Daggerfall lies, especially bad dungeon map combined with the labyrinthine style dungeons. Again, biggest recommendation if you're playing Daggerfall Unity, get the Archaeologist Guild. The locator devices are a godsend. They are some of the best items in the game. So, with that being said, I want to end here in the sun. And with that, we return back here to our home here, Gothway Garden, where we had so many adventures. Let's go on ahead and go to our home that we bought at the end of the finale as we close out. Overall, that is never the map. I'm still not used to the map system in this game. Let's say goodbye to you, Fortune. You were a great horse. Thank you for the time and the journey you took with us. As we go home, as we close out our adventure here in the Elder Scrolls to Daggerfall, my final kind of word impression is I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed my experience in this game. I think it is a wonderful game. I had such a great time playing it. I'm glad that so many of you came along with me on this journey, and I cannot wait for you guys to join me in my next, which, if you are watching this, the next game is an Elder Scrolls Legend Battlespire, which was a game that was released in 1997. It was actually intended to be an expansion pack for Daggerfall, but ended up becoming its own game. It is notoriously difficult, and considered to be apparently not that good. I don't know. I'm going in blind, like I am for all of these games, pretty much. If you're watching this the day the review goes out, I think I probably have already beaten it. How do I know that? Because I am going to be streaming it over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/thesshgaming. So go over there, check it out. Maybe the VODs will still be there. If they aren't, they'll be over on my VOD channel at SSH Gaming VODs, where you can go and watch the entire stream back. And eventually, I will be taking those, long VODs and be cutting them down to the kind of edited, digestible, episodic content you've come to know on this channel. So eventually, Battlespire will be coming here. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen because Starfield's coming soon, and when Starfield comes, oh boy. But yeah, so for those of you who joined me for Daggerfall, thank you guys so much. And for the final time here in the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, thank you guys so much, and I will see you at whatever adventure we next meet. Goodbye.